her and Charlie Adelson's plans for the night of July 18th.
Yes, and again, that was slide 257 we just spoke of. This is communication from Mr. Adelson's iCloud, and the afternoon and evening of July 18th, where she asked, how's work been, hon? He says, been busy. And then later, about to start a big case, which she acknowledges.
Okay, and did they discuss their plans for that night?
They did. 8:22 p.m. She texts, "You're still at work." Mr. Adelson, Charlie Adelson, responds, "Just finishing. I'm not really feeling good. Maybe we can just hang at my house."
And that message from him is at 8:23 p.m. to Catherine McBanois?
That's correct.
Okay, and he says he's not feeling good before she comes to his house.
Correct.
All right. Are you familiar with a call that Wendi Adelson made while at TPD in front of TPD investigators to inform Donna Adelson of Dan Markel's shooting?
Yes.
And was that call made by Wendi Adelson to Donna Adelson at 7:04 p.m.?
Yes, there were actually two close together there.
Okay, thank you. Which co-conspirator did Donna Adelson call after that?
So looking at Donna Adelson's locations and communication, there is a text message from Donna to Charlie, a chat that says, "Call us ASAP."
Okay, and what about after that?
So what we see is looking at the combined location information from both Donna Adelson and Harvey Adelson's cell phones, their locations. We see that they are consistent with leaving the South Beach area around or a little before 8 p.m. and beginning to travel north. We see locations here on this slide through about 8:29 p.m. And if we continue, we see events at 8:35 p.m. again in the North Miami area, and then we don't have any other usable events with location until 10:53, at which point they're in the north area down here.
Okay. Can you go back to just the slide right before this? Okay, so she receives a call from Wendi Adelson around 7:04 p.m. She's in touch with Charlie Adelson by she's attempting to get in contact with him by around 7:12, and within an hour they are leaving South Beach and headed north in Miami.
Correct.
They being Donna Adelson.
And Harvey Adelson,
And Harvey
yes.
Adelson. Thank you. All right, so can we go to your next slide? You said that their last cell phone communication with location data was in North Miami at 8:35 p.m. and their next event with location after that was at 10:53 p.m. Are you familiar with Catherine McBanois' statement that Charlie Adelson told her that his parents had just been at her home the night of Dan Markel's murder before she arrived at the home?
Her home or his home?
His home, Charlie Adelson's home.
Yes.
Charlie Adelson's parents had just been at Charlie Adelson's home before McBanois arrived that night.
Correct.
Okay. Is Charlie's home located between the location we see there for the cell site at 8:35 and the location for the cell site at 10:53?
Yes, we see here the location referenced by the flag of where Mr. Adelson's residence was at the time.
Is there evidence in the phone records that Donna Adelson went to Charlie Adelson's home on the night of Dan Markel's murder?
So there is another communication from Miss Donna Adelson at 8:59 p.m. stating outside your house.
Outside your house, and she's sending that message to Charlie Adelson, is that right?
Correct.
What can you tell us about her locations that night and how long she could have spent at Charlie's residence after sending this message?
Your Honor, I'm going to object and call for speculation.
Overruled. You may answer based on his analysis of the records. However, Sergeant, you are not to speculate or offer any opinions beyond anything that you have not directly researched for these matters. You may answer the question.
Yes, sir. So the question asked of me is, it possible for, given the cell site locations and times, is it possible there was a period of time where Donna and Harvey could have stopped at Charlie Adelson's residence? So to do this analysis, I looked at the events that we had with usable locations, and we see that there is this 6-minute phone call, and this is the 8:35 location we saw in the previous slide. But we see this phone call actually begins on the cell site in the bottom of this slide, which should be 263, and it ends on the cell site at the top. So to conduct an analysis of potential time between points, we need to establish a point to start measuring from. So my estimation of the approximate handset's location between these two cell sites for this phone call is approximately the area of that 832 little call out here in the middle. So that is the point that I started, again, with based on these two phone call, or the beginning and ending cell sites, estimated that the handset was approximately in the area of that marker at 832. Same thing for the ending phone call, or the next phone call that we had at 10:53. We see the cell site that it begins on and the cell site that it ends on a little further north. And so that will be consistent again with the handset continuing to travel along the area of the turnpike. And for our ending time here, I again estimated the location of the handset to be where that white call out box is at approximately 10:53 p.m. So with those 2 points and using the Esri route planning tool, Esri is the mapping software that we use, it tells us that that travel should have taken approximately about an hour and 4 minutes. And what we see is between 8:32 and 10:53 is actually 2 hours and 21 minutes. So the distance traveled is not consistent with the time consumed.
You spoke about Esri. Is that also the how Department of Transportation estimates mileage as well?
Yes, if you go to the official Department of Transportation site to get mileage for business travel, they use the same software.
What can you determine about when Donna Adelson would have reached Charlie Adelson's residence according to this estimated travel time?
So if we look at this, and again, we see the area of Charlie Adelson's residence. We have the message at 8:59 that says outside your house. Charlie responds to that about 20 minutes later with 10 men, 10 minutes. So again, using the same route planning, we see that that should have taken approximately 25 minutes to travel from our 8:32 starting point to Charlie Adelson's residence. And so that would have put the estimated time of arrival at his residence 8:57, and the text message is sent at 8:59. So that would be pretty consistent.
So the text message time is consistent with the estimated time it would take to get from the last known location to his house.
Correct.
And in that text message, she says, outside your house to him.
Correct.
And then he gives her an estimated amount of time before he'll be at his house, 10 men.
Correct. And what we see looking at Charlie Adelson's locations, the 9:19, when the text message is sent, we can see the cell site that his handset is using. As we continue down slide 268, we can see that he has communication at 9:21, and then the next cell site he has is, or cell site time he has is 9:40, and that 9:40 time he has become consistent with the area of his residence. So he reaches his residence sometime between 9:21 and 9:40. If we look at the 9:19 time of the text message, that 10 minutes is about correct for when he would arrive home.
So he says he's 10 minutes when he's about 10 minutes away en route to his house.
Correct.
After receiving the outside your house text. Is that right?
Correct.
And what do we see here?
This is just a close-up of that, again showing the cell sites when he would be consistent with his residence. arriving sometime before 9:40.
And where was Donna Adelson's next event with actual location data after she said she was outside Charlie Adelson's house and he responded 10 men?
Again, the next event that we have is the 1053 events, looking at their combined records. Is the next usable location event that we have. So if we look at the time that it would take to travel from Charlie Adelson's residence to that point, we see that based on the route planning, approximately 48 minutes. And again, the actual travel time based on those cell site usages was 1 hour and 54 minutes. So we have about an hour of unaccounted for time.
So it took her 1 hour and 54 minutes to travel to the 1053 location from North Miami, which left 1 hour and 6 minutes unaccounted for.
This would be the travel time from Charlie Adelson's residence
Thank
to
you.
that 1053 point. Did take 1 hour and 54 minutes, which was estimated to only take 48.
So how long could she and Charlie Adelson then have overlapped at his house during that time?
The maximum would be approximately 1 hour and 6 minutes.
And that would be including the time that she would have been waiting for him to arrive?
It would, yes.
Okay. So let's say she waited 10 minutes or so for him to arrive. Actually, he sent it 20 minutes after arriving after he received the text, right?
Correct. Charlie's response to Donna was about 20 minutes after she had texted outside your residence, and that indicates a 10-minute estimated time of arrival. So about 30 minutes would be probably the shortest that she would have waited, but you still have a little over a half hour of overlap.
Okay, thank you. So total amount of time, 1 hour, 6 minutes, and they could have spent about 30 minutes or so together during that time at his residence.
Could have, yes.
What else do you know about Donna Adelson's travels that evening?
So we have an additional chat later on.
Does he check back in with her to see if she got there okay?
Yes. At 11:56, Charlie texts, "Did you get to your hotel okay? Love you." She responds, "Thank you for asking. We have it on MapQuest. Hilton Inn on International Drive. We should arrive at 1:25 a.m. Get some rest. We'll talk in the morning." So again, looking at the point of the 1053 estimated location to the location she states she's going to, we see that should have taken about 2 hours and 20 minutes, and which would have made the arrival time around 1:13. Her stated arrival, estimated arrival was 1:25. So again, these are pretty close.
So no large amount of time unaccounted for during that journey.
That's correct.
The large amount of time that you have unaccounted for where she says she's outside Charlie Adelson's house is from the 8:35 spot to the 10:53 spot.
Correct.
Okay. Did you have an opportunity to do this drive that Donna Adelson took from North Miami to the 1053 location on the night of July 18th?
I did, yes.
And when did you do that drive?
I did that July 18th of this year.
And was that on a Friday night this year, just as her drive was on a Friday night in 2014?
Yes,
And on the same date, July 18th?
correct.
Can you tell us about that drive?
I simply traveled to that area, to the area of that first estimated location at 8:32. I started an exit south of that so that I was at traveling speed, and I traveled to Charlie Adelson's residence. I noted the time and mileage that it took me to get there, and then I traveled from Charlie Adelson's residence to the 1053 spot just to make sure that the roadways, all of those which have not changed, allowed for me to get off the turnpike, get back on, continue travel, and about how long it took me to do it.
Were you able to easily get off the exit for Charlie Adelson's house and then get back on again?
Yes.
And was the time it took to drive from Donna Adelson's 832 location in North Miami to Charlie Adelson's residence consistent with the estimated time?
It was. I was within just a few minutes.
Ms. Kappelman just reminded me, you said it was on the same day. Did you also do it at the same time of day?
I did, yes.
Okay, so Friday evening around between 8:30 and 11.
Yes, within just a couple of minutes of 8:32. It was a little hard to gauge my travel time to get to that exact point. Might have been off a minute or two when I crossed that specific point, but it was very, very close to the exact time of day.
And was the time it took to drive from Charlie Adelson's residence to her 1053 location consistent with the estimated time on Esri?
It was, yes.
Okay. All right, so moving on to the next day, July 19th. If you could walk us through the morning after the murder of Dan Markel, where's Charlie Adelson located at that time?
Charlie Adelson has locations consistent with his residence.
And what can you tell us about the communication from Magbanwa's phone that morning?
I can. So first we looked at her locations, and we recalled that we had that after 10 p.m. Cell site location where she was leaving the area of Mr. Rivera's residence. And actually the next locations that we have for her is the morning of July 19th. And we see again, this is slide 274, and we can see that her locations beginning at 9:44 would be consistent with her traveling south from the area of Mr. Adelson's residence to the area of either her residence or Mr. Rivera's.
Now, once or before this 9:44 a.m. Call, did she have some calls the night before that were routed to voicemail?
Yes, that were not. They did not reach the phone. Yes.
What was her last location then before the locations we see here? Was it the 10-20-something location we saw from the night before when she's leaving Rivera's residence and talking to Charlie Adelson?
Correct.
Okay. And in the text messages between her and Charlie Adelson that night, she was planning to go over to his house that night because he wasn't feeling well.
Correct.
Okay. So looking at this slide, does it appear that her phone is then the first active location or the first active event with location we have? She's coming south down from Charlie Adelson's residence that next morning.
Correct.
Are you familiar with Catherine Magbanwa's statement that she spent the night at Charlie Adelson's home the night of Dan Markel's murder, and the next morning she took the money that he gave her for the murder to the area of Rivera's residence?
Yes.
Was there evidence of that in the phone records?
So what we see, again, back to your initial question as far as the cell phone or the call activity, we're looking at the summary of calls in the morning of July 19th, and we see those events that we saw on the map consistent with her travel south. She is attempting to call Mr. Garcia. So we have a number of outgoing calls between 9:44 and 9:46, including a text message where she's trying to reach Mr. Garcia.
When she can't reach Garcia, does she start trying to call some friends of his to try to get a hold of him?
Yes, so immediately after that, at 9:47, she makes an outgoing call to Anthony Ortiz.
Does she also try to call Luis Rivera that morning to find Garcia?
She did not.
Okay. Does the attempted communication with Garcia stop at 10:31 a.m.?
Yes, so again, our first set of calls here, she's trying to reach Mr. Garcia. She's unable to. She calls Mr. Ortiz. And now what we see starting at 9:49, Mr. Ortiz is attempting to call Mr. Garcia. Luis Rivera is now attempting to call Garcia. And it starts this flurry of back and forth phone calls with Luis Rivera and Anthony Ortiz trying to find Mr. Garcia, or trying to reach Mr. Garcia. And that continues through about 10:20 in the morning.
Okay, so Magbanwa's calling Garcia's friend Ortiz. Ortiz is trying to call Garcia, and Ortiz also calls Rivera to try to get a hold of Garcia.
That is correct.
Okay. Eventually, do all of these attempted calls to Garcia stop, and at what point?
Well, they certainly tamed down. What we see for the first time is at 10:20, so we've had this period of time where everyone's trying to reach Mr. Garcia. Catherine Magbanua gets a call from Luis Rivera from his actual primary phone number, and they talk for about 1 minute and 40 seconds. So after that, then we see that Ms. Magbanua communicates with Mr. Rivera a couple of times. She does again try to get hold of Mr. Garcia, but all of that concludes at about 10:30 in the morning.
And was there any evidence as to why there wasn't location data for Garcia that morning and why no one can get a hold of him?
He had, dumped his phone. He had.
Yes, Your Honor, facts not in evidence.
Stand, please establish the foundation for the witness to testify to this.
What could you tell from his phone records, the evidence in this case, about why no one could get a hold of Mr. Garcia?
So Mr. Garcia's records indicate that in the early morning hours of the 19th, that phone left the network, was no longer in communication with the network. There are a number of inbound calls that never reach the handset. They do not produce location information or durations, so his phone is not in communication with the network. And that continues through the end of the records. That phone never returns to service, never makes or receives an actual phone call from that morning of the 19th through the duration of the records that we have.
What can you tell us about the locations of Rivera and Magbanua at 10:31 and the time period after that, once all of these attempted communications stop?
So again, we have the flurry of communications. That last call is at 10:31 a.m. And if we look at Ms. Magbanua's locations at 10:31, she is consistent with Rivera's residence, and Mr. Rivera's cell site locations are also consistent with his residence.
And are you familiar with Rivera's statement that he was able to find Garcia that morning at a girl's house and brought him back to Rivera's residence?
Correct.
Now, when is the next communication on Catherine Magbanua's cell phone after that with location data?
The next that we see is at 11:23 a.m.
This is about 50 minutes later?
Correct.
All right, and is her location at 11:23 a.m. consistent with Mascaro's residence?
It would be consistent with the way to Mascaro's residence.
Okay, thank you. Could this be consistent with her then leaving Rivera's residence after a period of time and heading back towards Mascaro's residence to pick up her children?
It could be, yes.
All right, switching gears again. Were you involved in securing a wiretap of some of the suspects in this case back in 2016?
I was.
What is a wiretap?
A wiretap is an active way for law enforcement to be able to gain information or intelligence. Everything that we've talked about in the historical records are just that, historical. We're getting records that already existed and having those provided to us. A wiretap is an ongoing intercept where we are able to, in real time, see the calls that are being placed, the outgoing, inbound, durations, all of those things, in addition to the content of most of those. So text message content and voice content, we're actually able to listen to those calls in real time while they're occurring. So this is a real-time, ongoing, active monitoring of the communications.
In order for a wiretap to be in place, does there have to be an order signed by a judge? That order has to be sent to the phone carrier so that the calls can be monitored by law enforcement.
Correct.
Were we able to monitor the content of the calls between the subjects in this case back in the time that these events happened, back in June and July of 2014?
No, again, we were investigating after the fact. All of that was historical. The carriers do not retain the content of voice calls. They don't record everything that you say and make it available to us. So we had no option to listen or know the content of those communications back then, outside of what we recover in text messages.
Okay, so the wiretap in this case is during the investigation, once law enforcement had identified the identity of these subjects and was trying to listen to see whether they talked about the crime.
That is correct. It is prospective. It is ongoing, real time.
All right, can you explain to the jury what type of equipment is needed for a wiretap?
Well, we use a variety of equipment. There is carrier-based equipment. They have equipment that is able to basically mirror those phone calls, that traffic, and provide it to law enforcement. We have equipment, computer servers, that are able to receive that communication and then provide it to monitoring stations, which are essentially laptops. We have headphones and software that allows us to see this information. It decodes the information that is sent to us from the carrier. So we can see in real time, it pops up with the time of the call, the phone numbers, cell site locations sometimes, and other information. And if it is a call that has audio, then there's an indication that there's audio, and we're able to actually listen to that through the headphones.
Does the software give the listeners, law enforcement, the ability to stop and start the recordings?
It does, yes.
And are synopsis of the recordings done by law enforcement?
Yes.
Is there any involvement by the actual phone carrier, like the company?
There is, yes.
Is monitoring of the calls done live and in real time?
It is.
And do the people who are monitoring these intercepts have to go through a certain type of training in order to do that?
They do. They have to go through what we call minimization training. The interception of communications requires that non-relevant or communications that are not pertinent to the actual crimes be minimized or not listened to. So we call that minimization training, and everyone who listens to or has opportunity to hear any audio from the wire has to go through that training.
Okay, and are the people monitoring it also thoroughly briefed on the case?
They are. Part of that training is a requirement to read the affidavit that was authorizing the wiretap and to get a briefing from the case agents so that they know in great detail all the elements of the case so that they're able to detect during the phone calls if that conversation is actually relevant to some part of the investigation. They need to know financial things, relationships, hierarchy, those kind of things. So again, they are briefed by the case agent and they're required to read the documents.
If the phone conversation is not relevant to the crime or is privileged in some way, is there a mechanism to stop that recording by law enforcement?
Yes.
And is that the purpose of that to protect people's privacy if they're not talking about something relevant to the crime?
Yes, the purpose of that is to allow us to minimize those parts of the conversation that are not pertinent to the crime and in compliance with the order.
Is minimization a choice by law enforcement, or are they required to minimize irrelevant portions?
It's a requirement.
Okay. Are you limited in time, or is law enforcement who's listening limited in time, in the time that they have to decide whether what they're listening to is relevant or not?
There are a number of things that go into that. Time is one of them, yes. We have a guideline for how long we should listen to make that determination, and then we have some guidelines for how frequently we can come back and check the ongoing conversation to see if that conversation has turned criminal or turned into something relevant to the investigation.
So the officer can then go back in and listen in again to see if they are now talking about something relevant.
Correct. We call this spot checking.
And can the listeners of the call tell if a law enforcement officer is doing that?
The listener of the call, I'm sorry?
Can we, as the listeners here in the courtroom, tell if an officer is doing that?
Yes. In certain versions of the software, there's an audible tone to indicate that it's been minimized. There's printouts from the software that tells us when audio was listened to and when it was minimized, and absences in the conversation, blank spaces where that recording did not occur.
And is the portion of the call, so the portion of the call that's minimized then is not recorded?
Correct.
When listening, though, and trying to decide whether something's relevant or irrelevant, are law enforcement officers also on the lookout for suspects trying to mask the meaning of what they're saying in case law enforcement's listening? Maybe they are talking about the crime, but they're using words that don't sound criminal in order to do it.
That's correct.
Is that quite common?
It is, yes.
Which phones were tapped in this case?
Mr. Charlie Adelson's and Ms. Catherine Magbanowa's.
And was that Charlie Adelson's phone number ending in 9223 and Magbanowa's phone ending in 1312?
That's correct.
Okay. And who supervised the wiretap in 2016 in this case?
A number of supervisors. I supervised from a technical standpoint to make sure that the information was being received and operating functionally. The case agent supervised the investigative standpoint. It's a representative from the state attorney's office to monitor the legal side of things, and we have to do periodic reports or updates to a judge during the ongoing wire, alerting him of our progress and seeking authorization to continue. So there's a good bit of oversight.
And who keeps or maintains the recordings of the wire calls?
A designated officer.
At TPD?
In this case, yes.
And those recordings, are they stored in a secure manner at TPD?
Yes.
On a few different recorded conversations throughout the wiretap, are you aware of statements made by Charlie Adelson that he does not know who Tudou is?
I am, yes.
In your review of Charlie Adelson's iCloud, like his text messages in the iCloud, were there messages where he and Magbanowa are having conversations about mundane things, but he says Tudou to her? He refers to Garcia as Tudou.
He does, yes.
So the phone records indicate that despite what Charlie Adelson says on the wire, he did know Garcia's nickname was Tudou?
That would be from the iCloud return, but yes.
Okay. All right. I want to move on to the bump in this case, which the wire calls came after the bump. Can you tell us the date and time of the bump in this case?
So these are the records of Donna Adelson's communication during that time frame. This is 4/19 of 2016, and what we see is the bump happened at 1:47 p.m.
Who was Donna Adelson's first call after the bump? And meaning the bump is when the undercover agent approached her on the street.
The first call was to Charlie Adelson.
Did she call Wendi Adelson or Harvey Adelson during that time?
Immediately after, no.
Did she call Catherine Magbanowa at any point?
No.
Anyone else associated with this case besides Charlie Adelson?
No.
And when was her first call to Charlie Adelson after the bump?
2:09.
So about a little over 20 minutes later?
Yes.
All right. Was Donna Adelson detained and charged in this case? I believe it was on November 15th of 2023.
Yes.
And we'll get into the details of that. But what I want to talk about now is whether we were able to, on the day that she was detained and charged, was her cell phone taken by law enforcement and a cell brite done on that cell phone?
Yes.
And in the cell phone that was in her possession, was there evidence that Donna Adelson and Wendi Adelson talked about Charlie Adelson's trial, his November 2023 trial, and the verdict as it was happening?
Yes.
Are you familiar with Charlie Adelson's testimony in his trial that Garcia and Rivera killed Dan Markel on their own?
Facts on evidence, counsel is testifying.
Sustained as the counsel testifying, please establish the foundation for your question.
Okay. Judge, may we go to sidebar, please? Thank you.